Welcome to my channel. What if I told you that 1 year from today, you could speak English with confidence, understand movies and videos more easily, express your ideas clearly, and communicate without constantly translating in your head, all without a teacher sitting beside you, without expensive courses, and without moving to an English-speaking country? Most people would say, that sounds impossible. Yet thousands of successful learners have done exactly that. The difference is not talent, intelligence, or luck. The difference is that they stopped waiting and started practicing. They stopped searching for perfect conditions and began using the resources already available to them. Today, I want you to imagine a different future for yourself, a future where English is no longer a source of frustration, but a tool that opens doors and creates opportunities. Many learners spend years telling themselves the same story. They believe they cannot become fluent because they do not have a teacher, because they do not attend a language school, or because they do not live in a country where English is spoken every day. These beliefs sound reasonable, but they often become the biggest obstacles to progress. People wait for the perfect teacher, the perfect course, the perfect schedule, or the perfect opportunity. While they wait, weeks become months, and months become years. The truth is that waiting rarely creates fluency. Action creates fluency. A classroom can help and a teacher can guide you, but neither can learn English for you. At the end of every lesson, the responsibility returns to the learner. Real progress is built through daily habits, repeated exposure, and consistent practice. Think about two different learners. One attends a class for a few hours each week but spends the rest of the time disconnected from English. The other studies alone at home but listens, reads, thinks, and practices every day. After a year, the second learner often makes more progress because language learning depends on contact with the language. The more meaningful contact you have, the more your brain adapts and grows. This is one of the most important principles of language learning. English is not a subject that can be mastered simply by memorizing information. English is a skill, and skills grow through practice. Imagine learning to play a musical instrument. No one becomes a great musician by attending a lesson once a week and never touching the instrument afterward. Improvement comes from repetition, patience, and consistent effort. English works in exactly the same way. Many people delay their progress because they believe they need ideal conditions before they begin. They tell themselves they will start when they find the right teacher, buy the right course, or have more free time. Unfortunately, perfect conditions rarely arrive. Successful learners are usually the people who begin with what they already have. They take small steps. They focus on improvement instead of perfection. Another important truth is that your home can become an incredibly effective place to learn English. You do not need a classroom to surround yourself with the language. You can listen to English while walking, exercising, cooking, or cleaning. You can read articles, stories, and conversations. You can watch videos and think in English throughout the day. Every one of these activities creates valuable exposure. The beauty of learning at home is flexibility. You decide when to study, what to study, and how to study. Instead of fitting your life around a classroom schedule, you can fit English into your life. This allows learning to become a lifestyle rather than an occasional activity. Many learners underestimate the power of small actions. 30 minutes of practice may seem insignificant, but when repeated every day, those minutes accumulate into hundreds of hours each year. Small efforts become remarkable results when sustained over time. The challenge is that many people want immediate success. They expect fluency within weeks and confidence overnight. When progress feels slow, they become discouraged. However, language learning is not a race. It is a long journey. The learners who succeed are rarely the most gifted. They are the most consistent. They continue practicing when motivation fades. They continue showing up when progress feels invisible. They understand that every listening session, every page read, and every sentence spoken contributes to future success. Learning independently also develops valuable qualities beyond language itself. You become more disciplined, more responsible, and more confident in your ability to solve problems. These skills benefit every area of life, Now imagine yourself 1 year from today after spending a little time with English every day. Imagine the conversations you could have, the opportunities you could access, and the confidence you could feel. That future begins with a simple decision made today. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Start using what you already have. Start learning where you are. Start building your English one day at a time, because real fluency begins the moment you take responsibility for your own progress and decide that your journey starts now. Now that you understand why you do not need a classroom to become fluent, the next step is creating an English environment inside your own home. One of the biggest reasons learners struggle is not a lack of intelligence or ability. The real problem is that English only exists in their lives for a few minutes each day. They study for a short period, close the book, and immediately return to an environment where everything is in their native language. As a result, their brain receives very little exposure to English. Imagine trying to learn how to swim by entering the water for only a few minutes each week. Progress would be slow because improvement depends on repeated contact. Language learning works the same way. The more time your brain spends around English, the more familiar and natural it becomes. The good news is that you do not need to move abroad or spend large amounts of money to create this kind of environment. You can build it right where you are. Start with listening, because listening is one of the easiest and most effective ways to surround yourself with English. Listen while you walk, exercise, cook, clean, and travel or relax. Turn ordinary moments into learning opportunities. At first, you may not understand every word. That is completely normal. Many learners make the mistake of stopping whenever they hear something they do not understand. Instead, focus on the general meaning. Allow your brain to become familiar with the sounds, rhythm, and patterns of the language. Every listening session adds another layer of understanding. Think of it like filling a glass with water. Each drop seems small, but eventually the glass becomes full. Reading is another powerful tool for building your English environment. Many learners believe they need advanced novels or difficult materials, but that is not true. The best reading material is often the material you can understand and enjoy. Read simple stories, articles, conversations, and topics that genuinely interest you. When you read regularly, you begin noticing the same vocabulary and sentence structures again and again. Repetition helps your brain recognize patterns. Over time, those patterns become familiar and easier to understand. Eventually, you stop translating every sentence and begin understanding ideas directly in English. That is a major step toward fluency. Another habit that can transform your progress is learning to think in English. Most learners constantly translate. They create a thought in their native language and then attempt to convert it into English. This process is slow and often frustrating. Instead, begin training your mind to think directly in English. Start with simple thoughts. When you wake up, describe what you are doing. Tell yourself that you need to get out of bed, make breakfast, prepare for work, or plan your day. These thoughts may seem small, but they teach your brain to operate in English. As your ability grows, your thoughts will naturally become longer and more detailed. You can describe your surroundings, discuss your goals, and reflect on your experiences entirely in English. The less you rely on translation, the more fluent you become. Your digital environment also plays a huge role in your progress. Most people spend hours every day using phones, computers, and social media. Instead of allowing all that time to pass without purpose, use some of it to increase your English exposure. Read English content, watch English videos, follow English-speaking creators, and engage with material that interests you. The goal is not to force yourself to study every minute. The goal is to make English a natural part of your daily routine. Consider two learners once again. Both study English for 30 minutes each day. The first learner stops there and spends the rest of the day disconnected from the language. The second learner studies for the same 30 minutes but also listens to English while walking, reads a few pages before bed, thinks in English throughout the day, and watches English content regularly. Which learner receives more exposure? The answer is obvious. The second learner gives their brain far more opportunities to interact with English, and that extra exposure leads to faster improvement. The secret is not perfection. The secret is consistency. Do not try to transform your life overnight. Start small and build gradually. Listen for 10 minutes. Read one page. Spend a few minutes thinking in English. Once those habits feel natural, add another habit. Small changes are easier to maintain than dramatic ones. Many learners fail because they try to do too much too quickly and eventually become overwhelmed. Sustainable habits create lasting results. Remember that every word you hear, every sentence you read, and every thought you create in English strengthens your connection with the language. The goal is not simply to study English. The goal is to live with English every day. When English becomes part of your environment, it stops feeling like a school subject and starts feeling like a natural part of your life. That is the point where real progress begins, and it is the foundation that will support everything you learn next. Once English becomes part of your daily environment, the next challenge is learning vocabulary in a way that actually works. This is where many learners make a serious mistake. They open a vocabulary book, write down long lists of words, memorize definitions for hours, and then wonder why they forget most of those words a few days later. Eventually, they become frustrated and convince themselves that they have a bad memory or that learning English is simply too difficult. In reality, the problem is usually not memory. The problem is the method. Vocabulary is not meant to be learned as isolated pieces of information. Vocabulary is meant to be connected to situations, experiences, conversations, and real communication. Think about how you learned your first language. You did not sit with a dictionary and memorize thousands of words. You learned words through context. You heard them repeatedly. You saw them used in real situations. Over time, those words became part of your life. English vocabulary should be learned in the same way. Instead of chasing hundreds of complicated words, focus on useful language that you can actually use every day. Many learners know advanced words that sound impressive but struggle with simple expressions used in ordinary conversations. Real fluency comes from mastering useful language, not rare language. The expressions people use every day are often more valuable than difficult vocabulary that rarely appears in real life. Another powerful strategy is learning phrases instead of individual words. Imagine you learn the word decision. Knowing the definition is helpful, but it becomes much more useful when you learn how it functions in real sentences. You can learn phrases such as, I made a decision, it was a difficult decision, or I need to make a decision soon. Now you are learning vocabulary and sentence structure at the same time. This approach makes speaking easier because you are collecting ready-to-use pieces of language rather than building every sentence from the beginning. Fluent speakers often rely on groups of words that naturally belong together. When you learn these groups, communication becomes faster and more natural. Useful phrases such as, to be honest, in my opinion, at the moment, as far as I know, and that sounds great can immediately improve your ability to express ideas. Context is another essential part of vocabulary growth. When you encounter a new word inside a story, article, conversation, or video, your brain receives clues about its meaning. Even if you do not understand every detail, the surrounding information helps you make connections. This type of learning is much stronger than memorizing a definition because your brain remembers situations more effectively than isolated facts. That is why reading and listening are so valuable. They continuously provide meaningful contexts where vocabulary can appear naturally. Repetition is equally important. Many learners expect to remember a word forever after seeing it once. Unfortunately, language learning does not work that way. Most words need to be encountered multiple times before they become permanent. You need to read them again, hear them again, and use them again. Every encounter strengthens the memory. Imagine walking through a forest. The first time you take a path, it may be difficult to follow. The path is unclear and covered with obstacles. But each time you walk it, the route becomes more visible. Eventually, it becomes familiar and easy to navigate. Vocabulary develops in exactly the same way. Repeated exposure creates stronger and stronger mental connections. Another important concept is the difference between passive vocabulary and active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary includes words you recognize when reading or listening. Active vocabulary includes words you can comfortably use while speaking or writing. Many learners understand far more words than they can actually use. They recognize vocabulary but struggle to produce it during conversations. The solution is simple. Use the words you learn. Create your own sentences. Speak them aloud. Write them in a notebook. Describe your day using new vocabulary. Every time you actively use a word, you strengthen your ability to remember it and recall it when needed. It is also important to focus on quality rather than quantity. Learning 10 useful words deeply is often far more effective than memorizing 100 words that you never use. Prioritize vocabulary connected to your daily life, your interests, your work, your hobbies, and your goals. These words will appear frequently, which means you will naturally review them again and again. Over time, they become part of your active vocabulary. Imagine two learners. One spends months memorizing thousands of uncommon words. The other spends the same time mastering useful vocabulary and everyday expressions. In real conversations, the second learner will often communicate far more effectively because communication depends on practical language. Remember that fluency is not about knowing the largest number of words. Fluency is about using the right words naturally, confidently, and comfortably. So focus on useful vocabulary, learn phrases instead of isolated words, study through context, review regularly, and immediately put new language into practice. Every useful word becomes another tool that helps you express your thoughts, share your experiences, and connect with other people. Little by little, those tools combine to create genuine fluency, and every step you take brings you closer to speaking English with confidence and ease. Learning useful vocabulary is important, but vocabulary alone will never make you fluent. Fluency comes when you begin using the language actively, and that is why speaking practice and daily habits are so important. One of the most common excuses learners make is saying that they have nobody to practice with. They believe they cannot improve their speaking until they find a teacher, a language partner, or a native speaker. Because of this belief, they spend months waiting for the perfect opportunity instead of practicing with the resources they already have. The truth is that speaking is a skill, and like every other skill, it improves through regular practice. You do not need another person to begin. One of the most effective methods is simply talking to yourself. At first, this may feel unusual, but it removes one of the biggest obstacles to speaking: fear. When you talk to yourself, nobody is judging your mistakes, nobody is interrupting you, and nobody is making you feel embarrassed. You are free to experiment, practice, and improve. Start with simple descriptions of your daily activities. Describe what you are doing, what you plan to do, or what happened during your day. As your confidence grows, your sentences will naturally become longer and more detailed. Another powerful exercise is mirror practice. Stand in front of a mirror and speak as if you are having a real conversation. Introduce yourself, describe your goals, discuss your plans, or tell a story. This exercise helps build confidence because it allows you to become comfortable seeing yourself communicate in English. It also improves body language and prepares you for future conversations with other people. Shadowing is another highly effective technique. Choose a short English audio recording and listen carefully. Then, immediately repeat what you hear. Try to copy the pronunciation, rhythm, speed, and intonation of the speaker. This exercise trains both your ears and your mouth at the same time. It helps you sound more natural and improves your ability to understand spoken English. At first, you may struggle to keep up, but persistence leads to improvement. Recording yourself is another habit that can dramatically accelerate your progress. Select a simple topic such as your daily routine, your favorite hobby, or your future goals. Record yourself speaking for a few minutes, then listen carefully. You may notice pronunciation problems, hesitation, or areas where you need more vocabulary. This feedback is valuable because it shows you exactly where improvement is needed. Even more importantly, recordings allow you to track your progress over time. If you compare a recording from today with one made several months later, you will often be surprised by how much you have improved. Storytelling is another excellent speaking exercise. Tell stories about your experiences, your childhood memories, books you have read, or movies you have watched. Storytelling helps you connect ideas, organize thoughts, and build fluency because it requires longer stretches of communication. Answering questions aloud can also simulate real conversations. Ask yourself questions about your life, your goals, your interests, or your opinions, then answer them in English. This simple habit develops confidence and prepares you for future interactions. The key lesson is that confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. Every time you practice, you gain experience. Every experience builds confidence, and every increase in confidence makes future speaking easier. Alongside speaking practice, daily habits become the foundation of long term success. The secret to fluency is not talent, intelligence, luck, or expensive courses. The secret is consistency. Many learners study intensely for a few days and then stop for long periods. Unfortunately, language learning does not reward occasional effort. It rewards repeated effort. 30 minutes every day is often more effective than several hours once a week because regular exposure strengthens memory and builds momentum. Daily listening should become a permanent habit. Every listening session helps your brain absorb pronunciation, vocabulary, and sentence patterns. Daily reading reinforces understanding and repeatedly exposes you to useful language. Daily speaking reduces fear and improves communication skills. Daily thinking in English helps eliminate translation and increases fluency. Daily vocabulary review strengthens long term memory and transforms passive knowledge into active ability. The most important thing is to keep your routine realistic. Many learners fail because they create impossible study plans. They promise themselves hours of study every day, only to become overwhelmed and quit. A simple routine that you can maintain consistently is far more powerful than a perfect routine that lasts only a few days. Success in language learning is often quiet and gradual. You may not notice dramatic improvements every week, but every listening session, every page you read, every sentence you speak, and every thought you create in English contributes to your growth. Fluency is built one day at a time. The final secret is understanding that there are no magical shortcuts. The learners who become fluent are not necessarily the most talented. They are the ones who continue after motivation fades. They continue when progress feels slow. They continue when mistakes happen. They understand that fluency develops gradually through patience, persistence, and consistent action. One day you will realize that understanding English feels easier, speaking feels more natural, and communicating feels more comfortable. That day will not arrive because of luck. It will arrive because you practiced consistently, trusted the process, and refused to quit. Every habit you build today becomes part of the fluent English speaker you are becoming tomorrow.